Hi golf, it's Nick here from Golf Tech Singapore. It's Friday, so welcome to another lesson on Golf Tips. This week on Golf Tips, I'm going to answer one of my subscribers' questions asking me about how to hit a fade using the grid and using the stack and tilt system. So this was a question from Horace Douglas. Hey Nick, can you do another video on fading in which you go through it a little slower, explaining on shifting the grid? So I did this video about 18 months ago now, and obviously I went through it a little bit too quickly. So today I'm going to try and go through it a little bit slower and try and give you guys a little bit of idea how we can change the grid to help shape the golf ball. So just before we hit some shots here, I'm just going to explain to you quickly how the grid works. I've talked about this in other videos, but basically, just to keep it simple, this outside line here represents the path that the club travels on. So it moves inwards on the way back and back inwards on the way through. This inside one represents the path that the hands travel on. So these are two concentric arcs or circles, if you like. And the reason why they're angled is because the golf club is on an angle. If the club is vertical, the swing plane, these lines would be in a straight line. The club's built at an angle, so the swing's designed to swing around the body in an angle. So if we have the ball position here, which is behind the centre point, so the golf club at this point is still travelling downwards and out to the right, represented here by this blue stick. Now, if I was to move the ball position further back here, that would actually project the swing path more out to the right, which would help to shape the ball more right to left. Now, when we hit a fade, we're actually, one way to do it would be to move the ball position forward of the centre point, which is the left shoulder. So by placing the ball in front of the left shoulder here, the club path now starts to move more to the left. So that would be one way to hit a fade. We're actually going to talk about how we can shift this grid and hit a fade in a slightly different way. But first of all, let's start off. Let's hit a shot from a normal position, and then we're going to play the ball position just forward of centre and just see what happens to the club path. First shot is when the draw is built in. This ball position, as described there, is just behind the left shoulder, so it should just project the path just a few degrees from in to out, should draw. The draw's built in. So you can see there, pretty straight shot. That actually started just a fraction to the right of the line and just drew just slightly over. Pretty good contact. Let's see what the club data is. 4.7 degrees from in to out and 4.4 degrees down. Now let's move on now. Let's place this black T-claw for the ball position now in front of the left shoulder. So I'm going to swing the same, aim the same, but now the ball position now is in front of my shoulder. So we will 4.5 degrees from in to out with the ball position behind the left shoulder slightly. Now I'm going to put it in front. Now, slightly hard to make contact in my experience, but this would be one way to fade the ball because the club would now be moving back around on the arc to the left, even with the same swing as the last one. Now, the ball fade is built in. So now you can see on the screen, just to the left of the line, it's staying dead straight. That was a pretty straight shot. It'd be interesting to see if that ball did move a little bit to the right in the air, maybe a fraction. Let's take a look at this club data. It's definitely going to be moving slightly out to in. So 1.4 degrees out to in. Very slight movement to the right on the ball flight. So pretty straight pull, but a little bit of fade at the end there. So you saw that ball flight on the screen. Pretty good shot. Now, that's using the grid, having the ball in a different position. You can see how the swing path is effective. Now, in the video talking about another way to hit a fade, and this is kind of what a lot of the best players do, they kind of shift this grid. So let's take a look at that. So this would be another way to fade the ball. Basically angled my grid to the left. So this white stick, which was in my original grid lined up with a target line, I've now set it to the left, and what I've done now is line up the centre point 90 degrees to that, and I've angled these lines on an arc around the body, but I'm actually aiming more to the left. So even though I have the ball behind my left shoulder, I can present the swing path more out to in just by aiming my body more to the left. So this would be a way to create a slightly out to in swing path without sort of moving the ball forward in your stance, by still having the ball behind the left shoulder. So by having it behind the left shoulder but aiming more to the left, if I aim far enough to the left, I'll still get a slightly out to in swing path. So let's give it a go. So as explained, I've just basically shifted my grid to the left. So now you can see this white stick, which is my address plane line now. Basically the grid sort of lined up to that. You can see how it's way to the left of the alignment of the mat. So by even swinging around my body in an arc, having the ball behind the left shoulder, the fade will be built in because I'm aiming so far to the left, I should get a slightly out to in swing path. So I'm going to try and swing along the line of the grid lines again, but by aiming so far to the left, that's going to still give me a slightly out to in swing path. So pretty good shot. You can see ball fly on the screen there, just left of the line. I think it's trying to fade back a little bit. Let's see what the data says. So there's a little bit of fade on that. So by aiming that far to the left, the swing path went to 6 degrees from out to in, and I still managed to hit downwards on the ball. So I find that's the best way to sort of strike the ball well and hit a fade, just by aiming more to the left. So you saw the 3 shots there. I'm just going to go through the data quickly. I'll bring them up on the screen so you can see in a bit more detail. But basically the first shot, which was sort of my standard, where I had the ball position behind my left shoulder, we're going to go through the grid in a second. That produced a swing path of 4.7 degrees to the right, so into out swing path. The angle of attack was 4.4 degrees down, and the side spin on the ball was to the left, 765 revolutions per minute. So after that, I wanted to show you guys a couple of different ways to make the swing path move from out to in using the grid, using the stack and tilt system. So the first one was to actually change the ball position, and that moved the swing path 1.4 degrees to the left, so out to in. The angle of attack was very close to 0, and this is what I was saying about making good contact when you have the ball that far forward. It does make it a little bit harder. I'm going to explain why that is in a second. Side spin was actually at 0. I thought it moved a little bit to the right in the air. It looked like it did, but it was exactly a dead straight shot, but the point being the swing path moved to the left. Now the second way that I managed to move that swing path to the left was actually by basically shifting the grid. So basically, if I was aiming square on this first one, that produced a swing path 4.7 to the right, I more or less aimed about 10 degrees to the left with my body alignment. You saw how I shifted that grid. So instead of being, say, 4 or 5 degrees to the right, it actually moved it 6 degrees to the left. So even though, say, I was aiming 10 degrees to the left, I didn't actually swing it 10 degrees left. It was 6.2 degrees to the left, which helped me make better contact. And this is probably the better way to sort of fade the ball using the stack and tilt system. Angle of attack was 3.4 degrees down, and the side spin was 187 revolutions per minute to the right. So behind me here, I have my golfer from face on, and I have my grid from the top view. What you'll notice is the club path and the hand path are arcs, and you can see here this is kind of like the arc of the swing. So this is my golfer. This is the left shoulder, which represents the swing center. This is kind of like the center point of the golf swing. This is the point where the club will start to change direction if you swing along these lines. So basically, with the swing center positioned on my left shoulder here, this arc will move backwards and up, inwards on the backswing, then down to the low point, and then back up again. Now, with the first ball position, which is my standard, if I drew a line down, it's kind of like 3 balls behind my left shoulder, and what that does there, it just projects the swing path out to the right. So this gave me the 4.7 degrees to the right. The second shot here, which was the first way that you can make the path move from out to in, was to actually move the ball in front of that shoulder, just slightly. And that projected the path 1.4 degrees to the left. So they're the first 2 ball positions, so basically moving that ball position to a different place. Now, what you'll notice here, with this one that moves in front of the swing centre, that club is already starting to then move upwards. I think the angle of attack was 0.1 degree upwards on that. So this is why this is harder to make good contacts. With the ball behind the swing centre, you're still hitting downwards and outwards at the shot. So the second way that I showed you guys how to fade the ball is actually with this grid system here, is basically to shift it to the left. So I'm just going to put in these ball positions so you can see. So this is like the top view as you look down. So the first one was here. This is my ball position that projected the path out to the right. So this was 4.7 degrees to the right. And then the second one was having the ball in front of the center, which is about there. That projects the path on my particular shot 1.4 degrees to the left. So there were the 2 ball position changes. Now, I basically shifted this grid. So this grid set up at, say, 0 degrees from the target line. If I aim this grid and just pick it up and tilt it 10 degrees to the left, that swing path that was at 4.7 to the right actually became 6.2 degrees to the left. So you would have seen that if I'd had the ball position here and moved it 10 degrees, my swing path would have been 11 degrees to the left. So if you want to shape the ball most left to right, you would not only aim left, you'd play the ball further forward. But I just wanted to show you guys that two different ways there to shape the ball or move the swing path from outside using the stack and tilt golf swing, using the grid system. So any questions on that, guys, post them in the box below. If you don't already, please follow me on my other social media platforms, and we'll see you again soon for another video on golf tips.